Hello and welcome to Mandibil. I'm going on a small trip here this sunny spring afternoon, and I thought I would give you a few comments on a few things. Might be the recent video Stefan Molyneux did with his daughter Isabella, as I understand she's called. Doesn't really matter in this context. I made a comment on the Discord server or the Discord forum, and I can remind you that you are welcome to drop in. There are a few guys and girls there who are interested in discussing philosophy, among other things, politics maybe. Not that that's my field of expertise or interest, but that shouldn't hold you back. We are discussing the pandemic and music and whatever comes to mind, and not least Stefan Molyneux, which is one of the major points in one of the major channels on my Discord server. So I have to look at the traffic. So I'm a little disconnected with what I'm saying at the moment. So What I made a comment on the Stefan Molyneux channel on my Discord about his recent video, as I said, where he discusses what he calls peaceful parenting with his daughter, and she sort of basically is, I wouldn't say she is indoctrinated, but she's clearly very influenced by, she uses the same terms to a large extent that he does, and talks about things that are not usually sort of something that should be the interest of a 13-and-a-half-year-old kid. So it's very clearly that she's very influenced, but that's also natural if you're doing homeschooling, and I think that's great. I wish I could have been doing the same thing. I have been wishing that for 10 years and I haven't got my wish. So it's great that she's being homeschooled and all that family stuff. It's just great. I have no quarrels with that. More power to you in that regard, right? What I'm more concerned with is, let's say that to some extent he is using her as a tool for his ends, which is, apparently he wants to be a novel writer, and he wants to be sort of a peaceful parenting guy, right? The Dr. Phil of peaceful parenting, right? Since his philosophy doesn't work, it's absolutely clear at this point what he's doing, calling philosophy, is not really philosophy, or at most it is as severely limited levels of philosophy. Let me put it that way, right? So what I think he's going to do is what I've been my biggest success, which is talking about peaceful parenting, and I think he's going down that route and then start writing fiction books, right? He's done essential philosophy, the art of the argument, the universal preferable behavior. So it's like he's done what he can do in regards to philosophy, I suppose he's thinking, right? So now it will be peaceful parenting, right? Now I'm the situation that I have kids too. I have two, among one a daughter at approximately same age as Stefan Molyneux. So there are a lot of similarities between my situation and Stefan Molyneux's situation. We're basically the same age. We're from 1966. We are both interested in music, and particularly the band Queen. Maybe not me in the recent years, but back in the day I was a huge Queen fan, right? We have a daughter, both of us, and she's about the same age. They are about the same age, right? So I have sort of there's a lot of parameters that are eliminated if I'm talking about the same aspects that he does, so I can elaborate on the same things to a further extent than I guess most people could, right? So there are a few things that I also mentioned in a comment in my Stefan Molyneux channel on my Discord, which you are welcome to drop in, as I said. Nothing is just, no shitty argumentation, right? If you keep doing shitty argumentation, try to fool people rather than having an honest discussion, okay, you might risk getting kicked off, but I'm very open guy. I can handle a discussion and so on. I'm not the type of guy who I'm a free speech absolutist, right? Okay, there's a few things that they discuss on. It's clearly that it's the viewers who had asked the questions, and I suppose that Stefan Molyneux has sorted out which of the questions are suitable to answer, or he is taking care not to bring in questions that might reveal sort of negative aspects of his peaceful parenting principles. So I guess the questions have been censored and selected for the show, right? I will take that as a given, right? And one thing I noticed, and that's something that is inherent in a lot of aspects, where I remember very long time, like a show or a podcast of his I listened to maybe 10 years ago, where he is chatting with his wife in their car, about whatever, I don't remember what, but I clearly remember how much time he spent on making funny comments and sarcastic comments, where you think he's talking about something that is serious, and then you find out a bit later, oh, that was supposed to be meant in a funny way. So you feel on that edge between is he going to be funny now, or is he going to be serious now? That is a very strong indication of insecurity, right? If you need to keep people in a sense of insecurity in a discussion, that makes an artificial, unbalanced. What would that be? That you're trying to wipe the carpet away under the opponent, so to say, right? By using a trick like that. And I'm not even sure that he understands that is what he's doing. Maybe, yes, we are talking about kids in the early teens and so on, and it has to be funny, and a funny comment here and there. But sarcasm is another thing, and she also comments on it, that when she says that, well, I have to deal with that 24 hours a day. You only have to deal with it in his shows, right? So she has a clear notion that this is sort of something he does a lot, right? He does this all the time, possibly, right? Or very often. And it's just a sophist trick. In my opinion, it's a sign of insecurity that you can't risk that the other opponent or your argument opponent has some good arguments. You need to make them insecure and react to your passive aggressiveness, maybe, right? And when they're insecure about how you are arguing with them, they're more likely to hold back, right? Because they don't want to look like a fool. It's the oldest trick in the book, right? I know I have seen, and I have used in my earlier days when I wasn't as developed as I am now. I would also use that out of some kind of satisfaction of feeling kind of superior. Not that I'm that type of guy, but it's sort of a remnant of being manipulated, that then you start to manipulate in order to make other people feel insecure, right? So it's just a bad trait, in my opinion. And it depends. Sometimes it can be funny. It depends on the situation, and people don't feel that they are being manipulated, but you are not laughing at them, but you are laughing with them, so to say, right? So that's one thing that I remember always seeing him do, right? When he's talking to his own family or people close to him, and also people who he invites on his show, right? Like when he had Rationality Rules on, apparently to discuss UPB, which he ended up not discussing. Where he, when Rationality Rules were about to present his argument against his first syllogism, he cracked some weird jokes that he had. I think Rationality Rules said he had 17 fallacies he had found in his book. So or 18, or was it 16? I don't know. But it's something like, then Stefan Molyneux said, okay, if it was a child, it could have a driver's license now. Such a fucking stupid comment, right? Such a stupid, sarcastic, weird. It is purely meant to throw off your opponent, as Stefan Molyneux would call it. I don't like to call someone I'm arguing with an opponent, because it's not a war. It's not me against you, right? It's may the best argument win, right? So to say, right? Metaphorically. So he has that, and it's damn annoying in my opinion, right? So it's just a sign of his sort of insecurity, in my opinion, right? Okay, so a term that comes around a lot, more than a few times in the video, is the notion of rules, right? There has to be rules. I think this is a much more important implicit proof or indication, evidence for the problems he is dealing with in his so-called philosophy, right? Because rules is authoritarian, right? Unless you agree to them. But you can't agree with a 4-year-old child about brushing their teeth, right? It's like it doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. I'm not sure how to do it, but and I'm not necessarily completely against rules as such. When you tell your children, well, you should brush your teeth, otherwise this would happen and that will happen. Fine. I mean, and it becomes a rule, because that's, I mean, it's hard to negotiate. If you can do it, fine. At the point when you can start to negotiate with a child about these things, do it as far as you possibly can, because then it's the child making the decision rather than you telling them what to do. That is what makes a grown-up person, not being told what to do. That's why we have this big motherfucking welfare state. It's because children have always been told what to do. They have never learned how to negotiate and make decisions, right? It makes them anxious. And when the state comes and says, just give me some money and I'll make decisions, they say, yes, take my money and make decisions. I'm just going over here and spending the rest of my money on what I want. Then go and make decisions for me, because I'm not able. I'm not a grown-up. I'm a man-child, a woman-child. But what bothers me a bit is that it is as if these rules are derived from the reasoning, right? As if, because I have reasoned without, threaten you with punishment, or, it says in the Bible or whatever, therefore you're doing it. But why would you do it just because you make a kind of reasoning that is sort of what he would call peaceful? That's not why that doesn't mean the child would. If the child says, well, I don't care if I get a cavity, what do you do then, right? So that is not clarified, because what I feel underneath is that it's actually still authoritarian, but it is using a rational, a reasoned approach rather than an authoritarian, just do as I say, right? Yes, but because this and this and this and this will happen, therefore you should, right? And I would actually say it's close to a violation of Hume's ill-sort gap. But it's sort of, it's not this is the case, it's rather that this will be the case, or this will be the case, therefore you should do, right? So it's still authoritarian if the child does it just because you have presented not. It's a convoluted way of saying do as I say because this will happen, right? It's not. It's still, if you want to be peaceful, the child should still have the choice, right? You should accept the choice, and I would say, okay, if you're choosing this. Okay, fine, but you are going to take the responsibility, right? You're going to take the responsibility. You're the one who's going to get holes in your teeth. You are the one who's possibly, right? And you will have to go to the dentist and they will have to drill your teeth and so on. Fine, it's your choice. I'm just trying to tell you how I would argue for why you should, right? And then you will have to leave it there. You have to let children make the decision. You can't make the decision for them at some point in their, I mean, a 3-year-old baby cannot make decisions. I know that, right? But as soon as they can, and you can negotiate with them, right? What I used to do was, well, if you brush your teeth and you're in bed before 9, I'll read you a story, right? I'll read you a story, a good night story. And lo and behold, they brushed their teeth, right? They chose. I didn't tell them to go and brush their teeth. They did it by themselves because they wanted something, right? That's a kind of negotiation. So I'm making a deal. I'm striking a deal with them, right? She cannot. If we are talking about my daughter, my son is a special case that I could get into another time, right? But then it's. I'm saying, okay, but if you do this, you can get this. I will give you this if you do this for me. So sort of, you're not doing it for me, but you know, right? It's not because it's not for my sake that she's brushing her teeth, right? But you know, get my drift, right? So if I say, okay, if you brush your teeth and you're in bed before 9 o'clock, I will read you a good night story. And my daughter, she loves to have stories, right? She loves stories, and I have, you know, mostly every night I have read a story for my daughter and my son, right? And it also helps develop their sense of understanding words and communication and hearing the sound of your voice and feeling that we are together and all that good stuff, right? And those few days when she or he went to bed after 9 o'clock, right? And if they had an excuse like, well, I had to do this or that happened, said, okay, I'll read your story anyway, right? Because I like to read stories. But in a few incidents where it was too late, I would say, okay, it's 9:15. I won't give you a story tonight. No? So then you'll have to be quicker tomorrow, right? I have to inflict the consequences, so to say, right? I have to not give her the story, right? But the point is, what you're doing is not giving something that should encourage them to do it, like threatening them or something like that to get your will. But they're not getting something by not doing what you have agreed upon. If you have made the agreement, right? It's the agreement you can always refer to. You can always say, well, we had that agreement. You said yes. You could even write it down on a piece of paper that says, and with signatures if you want, right? But we had this agreement, right? It says in the agreement and you agreed to it, right? So you can't blame me for just sticking to the agreement. So it's like, this is the way to do it. And but Isabella in the Molyneux video talks about children needs to have rules. Children need rules, right? It sounds like, to me, like, yes, Molyneux and his wife has inflicted particular rules on their daughter, you know, trying to argue from a reasoning point of view, like, well, this is going to happen if you do this or don't do that, whatever, this is going to happen and that is going to happen, that would be bad, and so on and so on and so on. But it's still considered rules, right? It's the term rules I'm concerned about. It's not about doing whatever chore it is. It's about the term rule. It's a rule. And what rubs me the wrong way is Stefan Molyneux is Mr. Anarchy, right? He is Mr. No rules. I mean, I know that he says it's no rulers. No, it's not no rules, it's no rulers. But if you're implanting rules in a child, you are a ruler, right? You are a state inflicting, using whatever science to back up your rules, but it's still rules, right? So it's just it sends the wrong signal to me, right? She seems a little sort of programmed, slightly, right? She seems a little programmed, and sort of a lot of aspects that I find very curious that she is interested in. Consider that her father is an anarchist atheist who has written a secular and rational proof of ethics, right? And understand how to argue and, you know all about essential philosophy and so on. Because she says at one point she has always been interested or have a desire to go into politics. She's 13 years old. I mean, what kind of success do you have as an anarchist if your daughter has always been interested in politics? Well, it's like, what the oh my God, right? Maybe this homeschooling has been so elaborate and talking about politics and bad politics there and communism there and this and that and the other has actually been sort of had the opposite of the wanted effect. It's actually made her interested in politics because he spent so much time talking about bad politics, right? It's like it's backfiring. I don't know, but it's sort of a sort of oh God moment, right? Or a holy shit moment or whatever. She also says at one point that when she's asked whether she would do something different than her own parents, and she says she would be more carefree about her children. And it also reeks a bit of authoritarianism, right? It's more carefree. And she mentions that her mother is sort of hysterical about cleanliness and so on, right? And okay, I mean, I'm not hysterical on that point, but I do like, I take a bath each morning and, I comb my hair or my beard. If I even do that. But I'm not hysterical in that department, right? Even less than I actually myself believe that I should be, right? I can be a little lazy on the cleaning front, right? But I do like to have a clean place. That's no problem for me. But it's also more carefree than her own parent. If it's a peaceful parenting, how does that fit together with her wanting to be more carefree around her own children when she gets that far, right? It's just it doesn't sound like freedom or sort of. It sounds like more like a cage of some kind, right? I don't know. It's just something I noticed, right? And also she mentions that in around the same time as this question, I think, she says that when she's asked about things that she would do different or something like that, when she gets to be a parent, right? That she has made a list of things that happened during her childhood or her upbringing and around her parents, that she's sort of noting that I might do this differently and so on. And Stefan Molyneux sort of, wow, I didn't know about that list. Maybe I should take a look at that, and censor it or something like that. It's like, oh no, man. So his daughter has made a secret list, and she is, enlightening Stefan Molyneux's listeners about it without Molyneux clearly knowing about it. Oh my God, he didn't expect that, right? So it's like, oh, maybe this peaceful parenting. I mean, I'm all for peaceful parenting in the cleanest sense of the word, right? But maybe it hasn't been that peaceful after all, or maybe it hasn't been that much freedom after all, right? And clearly Stefan Molyneux has some issues about megalomania and narcissism. I mean, come on, man, right? I've noticed this and mentioned it a lot of times in my video recently, and in the deconstructions of his books and so on. And for a narcissist, a child is a tool to make them look good, right? A narcissist is in a relationship where there's only one person who's being loved, and that's the narcissist. The other person has to serve the narcissist. And if he has, which I believe he does, at least some narcissistic tendencies and megalomania, his daughter has to serve his megalomania in some kind, right? Some way or another. And his ideas about this peaceful parenting is the tool she is, and she deliberately says she has been sort of a laboratory baby for this so-called principle of peaceful parenting. And it's just a small thing maybe, right? But it's about this list she has made. I think it's very clever. She's a very serious young lady, right? Teenager. I mean, she sounds like she can even distance herself from her father and possibly mother's sort of slightly camouflaged indoctrination, right? So she has already sort of freeing herself from the chains of her parents, right? That's a good sign, right? So there was one thing I noticed, and that you might not, if you have listened to the video, you might not have put any significance into this, but at some point Stefan Molyneux mentions that Isabella has a good sensitivity towards figuring out whether a baby is crying for real or they are crying because they are manipulating, right? I don't exactly know the terms to use, but you get my idea, right? And Stefan Molyneux clearly states, well, I can't figure out whether or not a baby is crying, whether or not they are crying for real or they are manipulating, right? They're sort of trying to cry to get their will, right? It's more sort of consciously. And I noticed that because I myself feel that I'm very good at hearing whether or not a child is crying because they're actually crying for something or crying about something, or they are crying because they want something. I feel I'm very good at hearing that. That points me in the direction that Stefan Molyneux actually doesn't have that empathetic sensitivity. That's a sign of narcissism, right? That's a sign of psychopathy, a lack of ability to empathize. But that should also mean that you're able to differentiate between when you're being manipulated and when you are people are trying to use your empathy rather than needing your empathy, right? So that's just a pointer towards there's some psychological issues, like some personality issues with Stefan Molyneux in that regard, right? So, and also, lastly, I should mention that she mentions about punishment, and then she says, well, yeah, not corporally punishment, but I am being lectured, right? So then Stefan Molyneux breaks in and says, well, 1 or 2 times a year she's being lectured about something, right? And then he cracks another joke about it takes 24 hours or something like that. Ridiculous, right? Sort of to get her away from answering the question. But apparently Stefan Molyneux thinks that he needs to lecture his child about how to do things. I mean, what kind of peaceful parenting is that, right? He's lecturing peacefully? I don't find that peaceful. If there's something important I need to discuss with my children, well, then I discuss it. We sit close and have a hug, and I'm, talking about things. It's not a lecture, right? And it's precisely because Isabella uses the term lecture. It's Stefan Molyneux talking from up on high because he is Mr. Philosophy, right? He knows about morality and everything, and the Orange Man and Christianity and everything. He's the greatest philosopher of all time. So he needs to lecture his child, of course, right? Bullshit. So I'm not, I'm into peaceful parenting, of course. Of course. But that doesn't mean that whatever he does with regards to his own child or child, basically, I think he has only one child, right? What he does, what the alternative method is good just because it isn't unpeaceful, right? So it's like, I have my doubts about what the hell is going on with this man, right? And just to finish it off, this thing about Isabella saying that she needed to, or have always had a desire to go into politics, that strikes me as completely on the opposite side of what the hell Stefan Molyneux has been doing for the last 10 years or more, right? And it seems like this is all about how to the failure of using his anarchy and his atheism. They don't talk about religion, but I would have loved to have a clarification whether or not she considers herself a Christian. I will hazard a guess that she does, but I don't know. But I would think it's because of her mother, right? So I think, and therefore Stefan Molyneux, out of fear of destroying the family, has to bow down to Christianity and to politics because of this situation. Now it's 2 women against 1 man, and he is the beta cock he is. He folds, right? And then he starts to lecture his audience about politics and Christianity, right? It's also obvious, right? At least to me it is. So I'm trying to connect the dots, and I'm behind my own dot connection activities, right? This is what you have to do, right? This is what I feel I have to do, and I will, want to tell you to consider doing the same. So there's a little noisy. I'm on the highway here, so I'm speaking a bit louder than I usually do, and I'm getting a little sore throat. So I think I have to stop now. I hope to see you soon in the Discord forum. Check in and say hello, and have a chat with the other listeners. And otherwise, give me a like, subscribe, and consider a donation. Links below. Otherwise, have a nice day. See you soon.